Peace. Peace, everyone. All right. Yeah. See, we got a couple of people already here. Let me know if you can hear me, of course. As usual, I know it's a daily thing. I shouldn't even have to say it at this point. But yeah, if you can hear me, give me some energy in the you know, scroll, the sacred scroll. All right. But I will. Everyone is woken up, awakened today with some power. I don't see. I can hear you, Chief, in the chat. So blessed love, brother Cruz. Yeah, can you hear me, brother Cruz? I know there's probably a delay. There always seems to be a delay. We hear you. Thank you, Sister Matra. Always on the one. So yeah, real quick. Thank you. Okay, yeah, it is a delay. So I really, when I ask, I should probably wait for about a minute or so, and for you to answer. But yeah, give thanks. Brittany Hereford for me and my girlfriend. Okay, peace, Brittany, and your girlfriend. Good rising to you and to all of you who are on the live. You know, um, yeah, I'm gonna definitely. I'm gonna be quicker today. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. We're gonna have to move like that. We gotta move like robots a little bit. Peace, YG Gutter. Yeah, yeah. Probably up doing that, working on some music, huh? I'd love to hear some at some point. If you got a SoundCloud, I don't know. Yeah, you could put links in there. You can't put links, but you could, put a fake link. Yeah, man. Let us hear what you've been working on all this time. More reminders. But anyway, let's get to it, so we're not here all day. Um, I put a post up recently about, it's reminder time. So if you see me keep looking at my phones and stuff, that's what it is. Um, I put a post up recently about real quick because I know some of you may not follow me on Facebook or whatever, and I'm still on Lock Diggity on Instagram. They put the screws to me. It's been over a month, and I still can't post, and I'm still on restricted status. Um, so normally I would put like a picture and a caption on Peace New Neptune Tarot. Normally I would put something like that, on Instagram, but like I said, I've been on lock, which is cool, But I put up a post recently, and it was basically it was the image of an eagle, and it had a crow pecking at it, right? So just a little quick, earth sciences for you. So the crow is the only um, bird that will peck at an eagle. And the way it does it is that when the eagle is flying, it will jump on its back and begin to peck at its neck, right? Trying to, basically trying to take it down. And what the eagle does, instead of trying to fight it or toss it off of it, it just spreads its wings and it flies higher, right? And in doing that, it goes to an atmospheric level where the air gets thinner and it becomes harder for the crow to breathe, right? So eventually, what happens is because the crow is having trouble breathing, it will just fall off, because it can't sustain itself anymore. So it's a great lesson in how to respond to lower order energies that are seeking to feed from you and seeking to attack you. You know, one of the things that I've often said and was often said to me, so it didn't originate with me, but I was always taught from my elders, kill them with success. We didn't have to kill them with kindness, type of type of egg bay, but definitely was always told, man. Baba used to say that the best revenge is success. The best revenge is success, and my youth will say the same thing. Yeah, Bobby used to always say the best because I shared it forward. Um, but being able to rise above is so powerful because you're ghosting the target. A lot of times people, we spoke about that almost on the first segment, no, second or third segment, where I spoke about a lot of times people who who the devil sends into your life, those people always want to see you in your old space. So no matter what happens, their first response is same old this or same old that. But they're trying to always bring you to a place where they first met you because that's where you're most relatable, right? So it's the same thing with the crow. If I can weigh this eagle down and I can peck at it and annoy it, maybe I can get it back down to the lower order where I first met it, where maybe I have some advantage, right? So, in simple terms, people trying to bring you down to their level. And the greatest thing to do, because sometimes we pride ourselves, you see sometimes even like reality TV shows where, I mean, it's always the women, that's just what it is because society puts dysfunctional um, women, on display, and then tries to make a blanket statement about all women. But they always put these dysfunctional women on display, these dysfunctional celebrities who were attention whores to begin with, which is why most of them became celebrities. And I'm a lady, but and they start taking the earrings off and putting Vaseline on their face. I'm a lady, but I'll kick your ass, and it's always this glorification of I can be here, but mess with me long enough and I'll come down here. Not I can be here and stimulate me long enough and I'll go up here where you can't be, and let you just keep shooting arrows at an empty target, at an apparition of where I once was. But in this time where we're looking at time, and how much time do we truly have left to have our own restoration and revival of divine people, conscious people? You look at the caricatures and the blasphemy that is now being used around words like Hotep, right? Which I still use. I'm gonna keep using. I don't care. I don't care if a bunch of sleep people now begin to make fun of a term because of a bunch of sleep sleep people using the terminology in order to exploit people. You should have had the discernment to see the scam artist and the crook and the con person from the gate if you were really walking in Hotep, right? But you see now certain things have to happen or had to happen in order for us to be able to revive. In order for the culture or the conscious community to truly have a restoration of what it's supposed to be, it has to it has to be reformed. Now, it can't be reformed until you actually see something is blatantly wrong with it. It has to be obvious that we have a problem here. This thing is established and this thing is moving in a way that it shouldn't, and it has to be redone. And that goes for any and everything you look at right now in the world that you're shaking your head to and say, man, that's a shame, man. This particular field or how they're handling this, or let's listen to the music nowadays and this and that. It has to completely fall in order for you to feel okay with it being destroyed. So if somebody comes along now with a sledgehammer and destroys the culture community, you'd be like, okay, well, yeah, it was getting out of hand, and we do need to do something else. So a lot of times we have to be able to respect when the spirit of something is leaving something in order to do something else. So the spirit of the culture and the conscious community, for instance, has already ascended beyond where we wanted it to be, which was, come and fuel the debates, come and fuel this one building a fake school, come and fuel this one building a fake daycare network for single mothers. Come, we could just go on with all the scams and the cons. But this spirit that invigorated and established that community said, I'm not in that. I'm out. I'm not in that, right? So now you're going to be moving off of fumes. You're going to be moving off of residual adrenaline from the 80s and early 90s, right? That's why most of the time in those communities, they're still quoting people from back then. Everyone is still, Dr. Ben, Dr. Ben, Dr. Ben. That was a long time ago because that spirit hasn't produced, new individuals, in that sense, right? And then, of course, when people come along with a little bit of spark and charisma, we immediately put that on them. But that ain't it. They ain't it. They just because everybody who you put that new tag on keeps getting caught in scandals, right? But the point is that as that spirit is rising, when you're in tune with it, you should be above it, rising before it, because all it's doing is being obedient to what you put out there. It's being obedient to what you called for. You ask for the spirit of that community to go up here, and then it starts going up there, and then you're just watching it while you're still collecting ticket money at the door for your most recent, you know, regurgitative event, right? So it's the same thing with us as a people. It's everything is follows kind of a Fibonacci sequence where there's a, like when you always hear me say everything is everything, because there's a pattern that exists within our own matrix, and then there's a pattern that exists within the matrix of the universe and everything else, and everything kind of pretty much follows the same sort of code, right? So just like the creation story, everything pretty much follows the same code of the creation story. So with that being said, there's times that, again, if you're a praying person, if you're a affirming person, where you may affirm for ascension, you may affirm for greatness, you may affirm for higher awareness and keener insight. And then when it begins to come to you, um, you just kind of level off. You look at it, and that's writing the check. I done wrote the check, but you won't cash it. I know we're going back to what I said before. You won't cash that check. You won't go up there where it's at. And as a result, give thanks, Baba Utu. Let's see what they do. um, but as a result, you won't really follow up with that. You won't go higher. So you're getting steadily pecked on, and you can't imagine that restoration and revival is possible in your lifetime. Now, for me personally, I don't see it as such. You know, um, I was around when the culture community, as far as we could almost say the golden era or the past golden era, I was around during that time, right? Um, not not necessarily an elder. Some of you call me an elder. I wasn't. I don't consider myself an elder yet. I mean, I'm elder to a lot of people, um, but I was just a youngin back then. But always the youngest one in the room. I'm pretty much usually the youngest one in the room now when I'm around, certain things. But definitely the youngest back then. So I got to see it. I was consciously aware of where I was at and where I was going, and the greatness that I was able to be exposed to at events like First World Lectures, hosted by the great Altamatics, and different experiences like that. Even being able to go to the Liberation as a youth, the Liberation bookstore in Harlem. These are all the places that created the tone and the rhythm and the setting, if you will, and the character energy of what it is that you're still experiencing. And the community, this was the beginning of the jazz of consciousness, right? So, the information was there, but, there's a certain jazz, like when you look at the genre of jazz, it was around, like, they say, like, the golden era of jazz, like around 1959, right? And, you're coming out of the ragtime and what they call the folk, the field music, and things like that. And it got to a point where you started to see, like, because for a long time jazz was dance music, and it was melanin rich dance music that non-melanin rich people would enjoy. And so it was celebrated, you know at a certain time it was celebrated. And then what happened was those same musicians, some of them went into the service and stuff like that and came back like classically trained, and they would create these big band jazz experiences in the military. I know it's a history lesson, right? But the point is that there was a time when it switched over from it being dance music because of the type of tempos that were being used to more what we call a syncopated feel type of thing. So that was a rise. Because why was that a rise? Because now there was more of the spirit being introduced, and the original spirit that created it to begin with. It was a revival, right? So for instance, if you take like a jazz bass line, what we call usually like a walking bass line, a walking bass line in jazz is going to hit on every beat, right? So if the beat is doom 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 doom, the bass line will go a boom, 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 boom. It's going to hit every note, right? That's considered a walking bass line. It hits every single note. But then there's a feel of what we call syncopation. And syncopation is I don't have to hit on the one because you know it's there and I know it's there. We both know the one is there, so let me hit on the two. So right? Now that started to emerge. And what happened was that because of syncopation, which was like vilified, when it first came, because then like horn players were now playing more on feel, because there was a time, before recordings of music, that when you had a hit song, it was put out on paper. That was the hit. The hit wasn't somebody bought your phonograph recording. The hit was somebody bought the sheet music. If you can just picture that, because I know a lot of you are now in a mediumless, or you grew up in a mediumless experience, so you only know streaming, or you only know MP3s. But there was a time when people would sell music, they weren't selling a CD or an album or a tape or an MP3. They were selling paper. Here's the sheet music of the song that I published, right? So it was almost like selling a book. Um, and then now, because of technology, they were able to move away from that, which was an ascension. And once they moved away from that, some of those musicians had a revival back to the old spirit from the old country. Because remember, jazz is an Amharic word. That's what they speak in Ethiopia. It means to have fun, jazz. So like when people say let's jazz it up, they're saying like let's have fun, right? So then they started playing with syncopation and slowing it down. And once they did that, the same exact people who were oppressing them and dancing to their music, and who created this minstrel circuit and everything like that, they now couldn't dance to it. They couldn't feel it anymore because of the syncopation, and they started to fall off from it, right? Now, of course, you still had big band music and stuff like that, and you had people who were still being hired to play in clubs, but jazz started to become more of a subversive type of experience now, just because of one thing, because of what people felt and what they were acknowledging that they were felt. That was another form of cashing a check. Like all this time, I can feel the one, but I'm gonna pretend like I can't feel the one. Like because you need to be able to dance, and you can't dance by feel. You can only dance if it's like electro music. Oh, there it is. Let's do it. Let's do the foxtrot. You know, so to be able to establish something of their own, they had to tap into their own gift and their own talent. And it's the same thing with where we're at right now, in experiencing not only our own restoration, experiencing the restoration of our community, experiencing the revival. I'm going to say the restoration and revival. There's going to be certain sensibilities that we know that we're going to have to tap into without unapologetically. We're going to have to tap into those sensibilities, and that's going to cause us to go to a place that other people may not be able to go. But if they're not flying with you, chances are they're riding on you. And if you have the ability to survive at that place, and that place is, let's say if it's a higher atmosphere, and you have the ability to breathe there, then in all likelihood you have the ability to consume whatever sustenance is in that space. You have the ability to consume the food of that space. And chances are whoever's riding on you can't consume the food of that space. So who becomes their food, or what becomes their food? You already know where we're going with this. You become their food. So not only are you their transportation, but you're also their meal at the same time. So the higher up you're able to go, and the more you force them to breathe that what we call that akasha, or that ether, which is what it's said in certain law that's what the gods breathe. The gods breathe ether, and humans can't breathe it. The more you do that, the more you're able to shake off not only the curses that those people bring, but you're able to shake off the malady that they bring into your life, man. So, that's something I just wanted to share real quick, and I want you to think about it. And a lot of it's going to have to do with this. You no longer procrastinating on your greatness. You no longer And you know, understand procrastination is intentional. You know, so you no longer intentionally putting off things that you could actually do now. You know, and allowing yourself to get distracted watching TikTok videos or videos online of people taking a eco line van and converting it into a stealth camping shelter or whatever it is that you get caught up watching. It might be cartoons, it might be episodes on a streaming platform or whatever. But procrastination is a huge part of this. It's a huge part of this, but also syncopation. And a part of that syncopation is we got to feel each other. We got to have a community where I know who's on the one. So, for instance, you listen to Latin music. I'm gonna take it back to music, and you already know by now. Everything with me is always comparison of two things. It's music and fighting. Um, but sometimes you got to go where you're most articulate. Just like you listen to Jill Scott, all she sings about is sex and food. Real Oshun type of delivery. It's either food, honey, molasses, you know, or she's singing about getting some action, you know. But it's just like in music, you listen to Latin music, or you listen to grits. That's funny. Somebody, let me leave that alone. There's something recently that came out about grits that was funny. Somebody wanted. Let me leave it alone. With syncopated music like Latin music, for instance, sometimes you listen in, and it's very difficult to tell the difference between the bass drum, the bass guitar, and the conga. Most of the time the conga is tuned to C and D, those notes. But um, when they're really what we call swinging, when they're really swinging and you really listen, sometimes it's hard. The bass will be doom 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 doom. That's a typical Latin, standard bass line. Doom 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 doom. And the drum maybe right. But when you really tuning in, and congos might you listen and you be like, okay, what's hitting what? And what it is that there's a call and answer response. There's a call and answer response, which goes back to the old country, right? Which is what they used to call field music, back in the days in jazz. Like Cab Calloway, stuff like that. Heidi, 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 ho, Heidi, 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 ho, dooba 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 doo, dooba dooba dooba, stuff like that, where there was the audience became a part of the music, right? But Cab had to trust his audience. I gotta trust y'all got rhythm. Y'all ain't gonna be doing a Heidi Heidi ho off beat. And the same thing when you're in a group. I'm trusting that drummer is kicking at the kick is gonna hit at a certain spot. The conga is gonna snap at a certain spot, and that bass is gonna keep that you know that's that pounding foo-foo. That's what it really is. Da-doom, da-doom. That's really what it's a feminine thing. That bass. That's another time. But the same thing happens with our rise when we start to understand our own internal community. We understand our own personal syncopation and our own internal coordination to rise, but also being able to convene and commune with each other. What is Brother Vermont going to do? Can I bounce off of Brother Vermont and then, go over to Brother Utu? And then from Brother Utu is Sister Kashia on her dean, and then there's Sister Moksha on her, these are all our new people. That's what I'm calling their names, right? Or Ia Precious, and it's a syncopation that begins to happen. It's like almost a very celestial thing, where it's like light is hitting off of each surface because it's trusted to be there because everyone can feel the groove, everyone can feel the one of our work. That's the only way you can really have a restoration. You have to start to um, you have to start to see the usual as normal. I mean, the unusual as normal, and that's what you got to realize. Like that's what the world has tricked you out of. Like even when you go into, and I'm not a Christian. I don't go into churches, but I got eyes. Even when you go into a Christian environment, the church is now a very usual place. If you think about it, there was a time where you had to dress a certain way to go to church, or when you listen to music, out of the church, you knew this was church music, right? Now you go to church, man, and the pastor have on a t-shirt, tats, which Leviticus tells you don't do that, if you're following that. But he'll have tats, he'll be buffed up, you know what I mean, and mohawk or something, you know what I mean. Obviously, Euro pastors usually got the mohawks, but you know, it's just everyone is just super cool, and some of them even use profanity and stuff like that. So what they've done, they've made it a very usual kind of place. So you're not really looking or expecting the miraculous, or you're not learning how the formulas to reproduce the miraculous, right? Now, I'm not here to really criticize that environment, because truthfully, I don't give a hot darn about that environment. I'm just using it as an example, right? But within yourself and within your home, you have to start creating an atmosphere for the unusual and the miraculous. And a lot of that is gonna require you to use a level of internal syncopation and celestial syncopation, where there's an interplay, just like creation, where there's an interplay between the unseen and the seen. There's a weaving that goes on, like when you read the Dogon creation myths and the creation stories, and there's a weaving that happens in that, or we look at Obatala, and that white fabric, or the resurrection of the white fabric, because Obatala it's a couple of meanings to that, but that resurrection of the law, or resurrection of the white fabric, what that represents is, that's that revival that I'm telling you about. So it's the fabric and the interplay. Like, how do you make a piece of twine? It has to be what's not there and what is there. It's just not a solid piece of something. In truth, nothing is truly solid. But physics lesson another time. So it's that syncopation between them, man. And then when we get together and we're syncopating like that, you know, that's when now you shake off, or you rise to the place of the gods, you rise to the place of ether, where now when they started using the musical time, I was done with them at the time. Oh, you're talking about the church. Okay. Yeah. Well, there was a time when the church established the music of the time. You think about blues music. Blues was a form of gospel. And jazz, blues, and gospel were all the same thing, right? They were all spiritual music. At the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, they were all spiritual music. But what it is that when you have people who now saw a certain value in it, this is how they started to break it apart, right? So we want to dance, but we don't want to hear about your God. We don't want to be convicted. We don't want to be convicted, because you remember there was what they call field songs, which they now, if you the classification would be like folk jazz. When you look up or try to study jazz, they'll tell you, like, you have field jazz, or field music, folk jazz, American jazz, and then you have like blues sometimes, which is considered jazz. But it's all the same thing, man. It's all people from the continent of Africa, syncopating with each other. That's what it is, right? So whether it's blues and it's that call and answer between the drums and the guitar, boom, bats, boom, boom, stat, doom, stat, doom, and the guitar, lost in the da da da, and then she said da 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 da. You see, it's still that same call and response, right? Or if it's jazz and you have someone comping on the piano, and then you have maybe someone on the trumpet, that's African stuff. That's that. You listen to music of Guinea, they do the same exact thing. You listen to old Ghanaian music, you hear the same thing, between a lot of times the kalimba, and it'll always be like a woman singing, and you'll hear that same kind of call and response. Now that rises you. That's pineal music. That's pineal music, right? Because the pineal now is searching for the space in between. You see, that's why I never liked electro music, or like what they call like rave music. It took me a while. Even like you have house and club. It took me a while to like really appreciate it, because I don't like all that. I don't like my music so cluttered up. Give me some room. You know, like I don't like the bass boom, 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 boom. Like, oh, wait. Let me get in there. You know, so that comes from people. That comes from music. Really, honestly, doing music on computers. That's really what that comes from. Because a real live drummer isn't going to do that. Even when you listen to marching music in New Orleans, it's doom. Even if it's doom, doom, it's going to be a play. It's going to be a fast note. Doom, doom, do do doom, 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 do 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 do. That's what a human would do. Only a computer would. And why? Because the computer is marching you off to your death, like a mortgage. That's mortgage music. Mortgage means the march of death, but um, literally, that's what the word means. But so yeah, we need syncopation for our rides. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to make this one. I'm getting ready to get off right now. But we need syncopation for our rides, and that syncopation is gonna require us to fill the space in between, and to cash our check for our rides, and not feel awkward about those who can't feed on us anymore. You know, and those who are trying to bring us to a point where they can relate to us. You know, and sometimes that means, like you hear me say sometimes, I'll summon a demon in a heartbeat. And like I've said, that's not I'm not just saying that spiritually I'll summon a demon on someone. I'm saying, like, I have cousins and friends that all I gotta do is buy them a bag of weed and some gloves, and they'll do anything I want. You know, that's what I mean by summon a demon. I got people down there too. Yo, someone, so come over here, punch this dude in the face. Come over here and kick this door in, right? I'm not going there. I'm up here, but I'm gonna place the phone call. That's a form of summoning a demon. It's not always you're drawing symbols on the floor. Yeah, but don't do that. Leave people alone unless they really have it coming. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I got more alerts coming on. All right, so it's time for me to make my move, but rise higher, man, to where they can't breathe. Choke them out. Just rise higher to where they can't breathe. How do you rise higher? Stepping stones. How do you find? Listen to Giant Steps by John Coltrane. Listen to Giant Steps. And how do you rise higher? Syncopation. You know, and that's why it's not always good to, I'll figure it out on my own. That's why community is good. You know, and I'm gonna get into that at another time, man. You know, we can command this season together, and we can restore and revive ourselves together. When you look at the culture community, it wasn't one person. You know, even people always speak about the odds that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were, and they were not at odds. When you're building something, everyone has a role that they have to function in. Period. You know, get out of that competitive. That's that Western, because we're competing for resources. We're competing for the favor of the people. People. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of room, and each person is going to do something different. Not everyone is going to be good with carpentry, and not everyone is going to be good for drafting laws and charters, and not everyone is going to be good at disciplining and enforcing the law, and not everyone is going to be good at arts and healing, and not everyone is going to be good at archiving and being able to disseminate between information. Everyone has a role, and that's going to require different personalities. So you may say, well, this dude is kind of square, I don't want him around me. But you may need that square personality for what it is that that particular role requires. And then you may say, well, this woman over here, this guy over here, they kind of rough around the edges. I don't like the way they behave. Well, you may need that rough around the edges for the role that they have to fulfill. And when you're syncopated with each other, you're learning how to bounce off of those different colors in order to rise back up to no color, where those lower order folks can't be. All right, so I'm out of here. You know, everyone, especially those who came in late. I told you I was cutting this down. You didn't believe me. All right. So everyone, enjoy your day today, and go up to that ether. Go up to that ether where they can't breathe. All right, everyone, be well, be safe. You know, the winds of change are coming. The winds of change are here. We all feel it. Something's something's funky in the air. You know, so just keep your eyes open, man. Keep your eyes open. A lot of people are dying right now. A lot of stars are falling, you know, and they burn real bright and hot right before they fall. But we're restoring. We're restoring. All right. Be well. Peace, 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 peace.